I will say, having worked at Huffington Post, at Experience Life, and been surrounded in the media community for a long time, there is not likely to be a wave of coverage of the most progressive solutions in medicine in our country for quite some time in the mass media. I mean, recently Maria Rodale, who runs one of the bigger health and fitness media companies in this country, Rodale, took the advertising out of Prevention Magazine because she's said straight up, there is no way we can accurately cover health without taking the ads out, because the ads drive the editorial in so much of what we see. So I actually think it's really exciting. What's happening now is kind of a leapfrogging of the media industry with folks like you guys creating amazing content and going directly to consumers and saying, here's what I know, let me share this with you.
That was Pilar Gerasimo, founding editor of Experience Life, an award-winning whole-life health and fitness magazine that reaches nearly 3 million people across the USA, speaking at a Functional Forum conference on the evolution of primary care panel back in May 2017. You're tuned to Pregnancy, Birth and Beyond, coming to you live from the studios of Bay FM in Byron Bay, broadcasting across Australia on the Community Radio Network and heard worldwide on podcast. I'm Annalia Tia, and you're listening to Part 2 of The Changing Face of Medicine, Medicine Emerging. In this next bit, we will be hearing from 4 healthcare providers on the topic of what is now coined Patient Zero. That is, that the physician or practitioner themselves become a patient and get to experience the health-oriented approach and what it is like on the other side of the table. Naturopathic doctor and director of medical education at the Institute for Functional Medicine, Christy Hughes, highlights the importance of physician work-life balance. Australian GP Dr. Tom Rowley asks the question, can a GP be unhealthy? Sachin Patel models healthcare through his own health, and Dr. Thomas Salt talks about operating in a micro-practice and the essence of being a healthcare practitioner.
I think part of the challenge is just that balance point, and with functional medicine, you can get to a point where it's all referral driven, right? And it's all driving people's needs. And then you got to find that touch point of how much is enough for you as a provider, that you're making the difference, but you're not exhausted when you go home and play with the kids. I think what I'm thrilled to see is in the field of functional medicine, that topic is front and center. Physicians preventing physician burnout, med students really dealing with residents, doing self-care. I mean, we as the healthcare providers need to be front.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
I think people pick it up too. There is something around hopefully as a general practitioner, I'm trying to model aspects of health that are to bring through, that if people see GP as healthy. I mean, it is an ongoing debate. Can a GP be unhealthy and still deliver good healthcare? They probably can, but it's not meeting that kind of role model aspect of that we could have as well.
Sachin, I know, when people come into your mentorship program, the first thing that you have them do is do the health, get healthy to become living proof. How much of an impact does that have to be able to, really communicate that to these, the new doctors that are coming through?
Well, everything you do is an extension of yourself. So if your business is going to be successful, you have to be, in life, successful. And so every person that that goes through our program actually becomes patient zero. So they get to experience what it's like to actually be, because most functional medicine practitioners kind of do it on themselves. And so you're not your best, most unbiased person to treat yourself. And I hear people laughing because you've done that before. And I was guilty of that at one point. So it's important that the doctor becomes the first patient and encounters what it's like to actually be the patient and be interviewed and to get the testing done and have somebody else give them that second or even that third opinion about their health.
I think there's a lot of organizational tips, but I think the most important tip is just do it. You can get paralysis of analysis. There's all of these things that you got to do, and oh my God, what about this? And what happens if this happens? Well, if it happens, and you figure it out. And I think that's the beauty of a micro practice. I was in a big practice too. In fact, I was sort of right on the verge of getting to a functional medicine hospital out in the frozen tundra. And there were too many people with opinions, It's like, this is too hard. So I kind of broke free from that and went, first I became an employee, and then turns out I'm a terrible employee. So I started a micro practice, and then now I'm resisting more partners because you do the same thing over and over expecting a different result. It turns out that's insanity, so apparently I'm insane. But you build and you grow because there's so much demand. I live 2 hours west of here in a tiny little town, 900 people, and we have recently solved our problem of being booked out for a year. Now we're only booked out for about 6 months. If I can do this, if you live in a city, like, it's not, you don't have to work that hard at it. You have to be true to yourself, You have to do the things that were discussed and be real and live in compassion and be compassionate and try to foster compassion in everybody you know. And it happens because you're delivering compassionate care, and compassionate care heals. That's really what functional medicine is. Functional medicine, fundamentally, storytelling is the original healing device, right? It's the original thing that we could do for each other, was listen and retell. And that's the basis of functional medicine. All the rest of it is details. All the rest of it is, she's going to use andrographis and I'm going to use, ampicillin or something. Those are details. They aren't that important. But we get so caught up in the details. The real goal here is live in compassion and inspire compassion, and people get better.
Now, someone comes in your office and they have symptoms of hopelessness, helplessness. They have no interest in sex. They can't sleep. They're not hungry, and they don't want to eat. The diagnosis is depression, right? What I'm suggesting to you is that depression is not a Prozac deficiency, right? Right? Depression is just the name that we give to people who have those symptoms. It's not the cause of those symptoms, right? We get so stuck on the name and we think, oh, I know what's wrong with you. You have depression. That's why you have those symptoms. It's not. Oh, you have rheumatoid arthritis. That's why your joints hurt and they look like this and you have this blood work. No, that's just the name of those symptoms or those blood tests or whatever our diagnostic criteria are. It's not the cause. So if someone comes with depression, you got to start thinking. And this is where we really need to do the work, which is where I get the functional medicine headache sometimes in my office. It could be because they're eating gluten and they have developed an autoimmune disease like Hashimoto's and have low thyroid, and that causes depression. Or it could be because they're eating bad food and have reflux and have been taking Prilosec for 20 years and they have B12 deficiency. Or it could be because they live in Seattle and have vitamin D deficiency, or because they've taken antibiotics and altered their gut flora, or because they eat too much sushi and have mercury poisoning, or because they hate fish and have omega-3 deficiency, or because they have prediabetes because they eat too many Cinnabons. All these things can cause depression. But you have to figure out which one it is for that person.
That was Dr. Mark Hyman. Dr. Hyman is a practicing family physician, a 10-time #1 New York Times bestselling author, and an internationally recognized leader, speaker, educator, and advocate in his field. He is the director at the Cleveland Clinic Center for Functional Medicine. He is also the founder and medical director of the Ultra Wellness Center, chairman of the board of the Institute for Functional Medicine, a medical editor for Huffington Post, and was a regular medical contributor on many television shows including CBS This Morning, Today Show, Good Morning America, CNN, and The View, Katie and the Dr. Oz Show. The Institute for Functional Medicine's website received over 1 million individual searches for a functional medicine practitioner just this year, and this is back in May 2017. As discussed in part 1 of this 2-part special feature, I am exploring the changing landscape of medicine around the world and how Australian physicians and consumers alike are inspired to ask better questions about their healthcare system.
Christy, we've seen in the last few years that, there's this little button on the top of the IFM's website, Find a Practitioner, and the numbers have just gone from like 200,000 to now over 1 million last year. It seems to me in a certain way like some of the summits and books. How many books have there been by functional medicine? The content's sort of making its way out there, and people are finding these practitioners. But I think, as Sachin said, we need a lot more, and we need them to have a scalable business model, because everyone just get filled up, and there's a 6-month waiting list doesn't help the guy with autoimmune disease.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, you nailed the numbers. I mean, it's just stunning when we were watching the fourth quarter presenting last year and seeing this trajectory towards 1 million searches on the site. That would have been unheard of. We wouldn't have even guessed that possible a few years ago. So that's 1 million people were on the site this year. Unique individual searches coming in looking to find a practitioner in their area. And so, I think we also are at a tipping point where practitioners, have different levels of training, and there's certainly different ways that people can move throughout their educational lifelong learning experience. So, we've just made sure that we opened up a lot of opportunities and avenues, supporting those at the level of health coaches, those at the level of primary care, those who are looking, to connect with mentors and others in the field.
Doctors and practitioners around the world are finding new ways to practice medicine in a sustainable, patient-centered and health-oriented way. Those that have taken the leap can attest to the success of their approach and are seeing change in their patients and the systems around them. It would be virtually impossible for a huge system like the current medical system to change overnight. In fact, it may never change to incorporate the changes it really needs to be sustainable. Responsibility in reinventing healthcare to be the glorious, sustainable and equitable service we all want it to be lies in all our hands. From the institutions that train healthcare professionals, to the governments that design and build them, to the consumers that inform and use these services, and beyond. Re-envisioning medicine is a humankind project, taking into account everything we have learned and believing we can do better. We all need to start telling the new story of healthcare. Thank you for tuning in today. You have been listening to the changing landscape of medicine around the world and how Australian physicians and consumers are inspired to ask better questions about our healthcare system. Contemporary conversations where stories, science, traditions and new ideas meet. Pregnancy, Birth and Beyond is coming to you live from the studios of Bay FM in Byron Bay, broadcasting across Australia on the Community Radio Network and heard worldwide on podcast. For links, citations and more information about this program, head to our website pbbmedia.org.